Chapter 7. In my anxiety to set him talking after his own fashion, I had not yet asked him anything about what had passed between Esdale and Smith, but I intended to do so. For, just as Monty himself had been the first obstacle to Philip's letting us into the heart of his mystery straight away, so Smith, you will remember, had since blocked the current of disclosure. Philip had had to see Smith before taking the next step, and, as I had figured the matter, he would go to the hospital one day as soon as Smith had sufficiently recovered, would ask for his account of the affair, and would then take the rest of us into his confidence or not, as the case might be. In other words, it depended on Smith's explanation whether Philip and the rest of us continued our efforts at suppression or did the other thing. But now Esdale seemed to have taken neither course. As far as I could gather, he had calmly evaded the whole situation by carrying Smith off into the country out of our sight and hearing. I admit that, since the assassin was taken into the bosom of Esdale's own family, it looked as if he had succeeded in making out some sort of a case for himself, but I also remember the strong bias of friendship and the practically instantaneous resolution both he and Hubbard had taken that their chummy was to be stood by till the last possible moment. That is not the most judicial frame of mind imaginable. Loftier, if chillier heights are conceivable. Esdale alone of us had asserted from the beginning, and had stuck unwaveringly to it, that as a matter of plain unvarnished fact Smith had shot Maxwell. All along his manner had proclaimed that the accident theory, which was good enough for the women and the police, was vamped up and a lie. Was he now going to have the face to say to us, well, I've seen him, and he admits everything, but he had his reasons, unfortunately they meant putting a bullet into a fellow, but to hang. Chummy won't bring t'other chap back to life, better let the whole thing drop? How beautifully simple. But at the same time how very unfortunate that an outsider, laboring under a sense of grievance, should have patted Monty's pocket as he came down the ladder that morning. Monty had risen, a little shamefacedly I thought. But for my call I fancy he would have left his break-fast things as they were, washing up the next cup when he wanted it. Now he began to stack them together for a general washing up. He went into the little lobby place that held his taps and I heard the running of water into a basin, then he turned to his tumbled bed and began to remake it. He muttered something about my not minding his carrying on. I was far from minding it. But look here, I said as he moved about Smith. You say Philip's seen him, what did he say about it? Who, Philip or Smith? Well, both of them. Didn't Philip tell you? He didn't say much. He wasn't gone much more than half an hour, couldn't have had more than 10 minutes with him, and then he came back and said he was taking him away the next day but one. Then that was while you were still at the studio. Yes. It was then I told him I'd had enough of it and was coming back here. He told me not to be an ass, but I don't call that being an ass. I don't mean there was a row, but I'd got my back up a bit, and I didn't feel like asking him questions. I was sorry for him too in a way. You see, that morning after his wife came up what? I exclaimed in surprise. Has his wife been up since she left that morning? This, as I have told you, was the first I had heard of it, yes. She turned up late one night. I was out, I'd gone for a walk Roehampton Way just to think things over, that was before Audrey told me she stopped, as if distrusting his voice. Yes? I gently urged him. About his wife coming up. I didn't see her till next morning. I expect she was tired out with the journey, anyway, her face was as grey as that Michelet paper there. And Philip was done in too. That's why I didn't want to make any bother. I couldn't help feeling sorry for him. I don't know what's happened to us all. I could have told him. It was the case that had happened. Mrs. Esdale too, she was just the same naturally. The case was the same. I hadn't very much talk with her. Of course, I asked her how Joan was. Yes, Joan was in the case too. And she told me she'd seen Dottie the night before. Dottie was all a bundle of nerves, and Mrs. Esdale put her to bed. She told me that if she were me she'd go round there at once and tell her, but here he broke down suddenly and completely. He sank on the edge of his bed and buried his face in his hands. He shook with sobs. Oh, he broke out uncontrollably, it's all that beast Cunningham. Oh no, I thought, it wasn't Cunningham, it was the case. You don't know the life that brute led her, he went on. Drunken blackguard, women all over the place, and Dottie at home. I hope he's in hell. Killed her heart he did. Can you blame her for not wanting to chance it again? I hardly had the heart to beg her, I was so broken up. She admitted she'd nothing against me. She just wanted to be right away from all men. So I pay for that beast. Somebody always has to pay, I expect. If only I'd seen her before he did. Presently he was better. He got up and began to move about again. Sorry, he said shortly. But what would you do? Well, I should shave for one thing, I said quietly, and for another, I don't think I'd make up my mind that everything was entirely hopeless. You never know what'll happen. It may be all right presently. I suppose you're right, he admitted. No good chucking your hand in like this. Sorry. But it is a bit upsetting, you know. Could I at that moment have added to his troubles by telling him about Westbury, the ladder and the pistol in his pocket? Perhaps I could have done. Anyway, I didn't.